Hello and welcome back to My Mom's Basement, ladies and gentlemen. I am here with Zach Lind from Jimmy Eat World. He's the drummer of the band, a founding member of the band, of course. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm really stoked to have you on the show. I've been a fan of your band forever, like my entire life. I feel like Jimmy Eat World is one of the most consistently great bands in the scene. I really like the last album. I love the sound of Something Loud. Where did that latest song come from you guys as a band?
So something loud was over the course of the COVID pandemic, we've known we had some ideas floating around. So it was sort of the idea musically that we felt like had the most excitement, I guess, and it sort of felt like we really wanted to do something kind of upbeat. And so we kind of just picked it because of that, and then we sort of kicked ourselves in the pants to get it finished and close it out. Um, but in terms of like where the song comes from, I think it was sort of like from Jim's perspective, it was kind of like a excitement for things to come and kind of like understanding and appreciating where we are now in our career and how that relates to where we were before when we were younger. And I think with age you kind of get that um appreciation of the moment, and I think that's kind of what the song is about, is like looking back and learning that there's sort of some moments that come and go where you're not really in the moment and really appreciating it. And so as we get older, I think we're more aware of that, and it's, I think, kind of a contrast of being a little bit older and wiser and then looking back on our younger selves. And that's at least what it kind of feels like to me.
And I saw it was the first song that, or the first single that you guys released independently. And Jim
Right.
said that it's left the band wanting to focus on less music, but hopefully more often. Can you expand upon that at all?
Yeah, I think this is, just more as it relates to right now. I think the reality of it is coming out of the pandemic, we had really surviving right before the pandemic hit. And uh, when we didn't get that opportunity to tour very much on surviving, and a lot of that whole album cycle just kind of vanished. Um, on the one hand, we kind of realized the reality that we needed to come up with new music, but on the other hand, we also acknowledged that like our band body clock was off. Like all of a sudden, we're sort of expecting ourselves to do something that in the past, having that sort of year and a half of touring was a really vital part of us in the creative process. After when we wrap up touring, then we kind of get into writing new music. So when that whole step is removed, um, you don't get that time to really let your creative, like songwriting and coming up with new material. Sometimes you gotta like rest a little bit and not worry about doing that. And so when we didn't really get that window of time, we were a little bit daunted by the idea of making an album. So I think, so for us, I think we know at some point we need to make an album. Like it's not like we can't just like say, okay, we're never making albums anymore. The reality of it is like if we had 12 amazing songs, we wouldn't be having this conversation, right? So like if we have 12 great songs that all fit together, um, then we're putting on an album, like that's easy. But we know, like, just sort of acknowledging our limitations and saying, it's okay, we don't have an album ready yet, but we do have some really promising ideas, and we don't want to sit and like wait for a whole album to come together. That just felt like an insurmountable hurdle. So kind of breaking it off by piece is something that felt like, okay, let's just like get going with that and then see where that leads us. And we honestly don't really even know like exactly how this is going to play out. It's very fluid. We're just kind of, Something Loud has had a really great response. So it's like we're kind of focused on supporting that, and then we'll kind of see what comes down the road later.
And speaking of COVID shutting everything down and everything, what was it like playing Lollapalooza last year? Was that your first gig back?
Yeah, that was like literally the first show we played in front of, like, it seemed like there was like 60,000 people in the audience. I don't know. It was really big audience. It was a trip for that to be your first show back. was interesting. But yeah, we had a blast. I mean, it felt really good to be back. It just felt kind of surreal, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. But yeah, it was kind of like a little bit of a nerve-wracking experience because, usually you want to kind of ease into it. And for us, that was kind of the opposite of that. So
Crazy. I can't imagine that. You're also a huge Arizona sports fan. I know that from your Twitter and everything. How would you rank your sports fandoms as far as like against each other?
in terms of like the different teams in town, you mean?
Yeah, like who are you most passionate about?
Right. So like my favorite team to go and watch is the D-backs, like hands down. I love going to baseball games. For me, even despite how good or bad your team is, going to a baseball game is like the top for me. And then like it's probably the Cardinals are a close second in terms of liking to go to the games, but I typically don't go to a ton of Cardinals and more sort of invested emotionally as a Cardinal fan than I am a D-back fan. I think I'm more of a baseball fan, and I love the D-backs. They're my team that I root for, but I just love going to games and I love the sport. But football is like a sport that like I think kind of uh just it's something that is I'm a huge fan of the Cardinals. And obviously you root for them. And then after that, it's probably, the Suns, obviously. We're a huge Sun, like the band we're huge Suns fans. And I love going to Suns games. And then after that, probably ASU baseball, honestly.
Do you ever have conflicts with like big games that you have shows on the same day of, and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to pay attention on stage?
For sure. Yeah. Like we've been on Europe playing a show and the Cardinals are playing. And I've definitely had my laptop next to my drum set watching the game. I'm guilty of that.
I love that. And growing up, the son of Jack Lind, obviously a former player, manager himself, what attracted you to drums in the first place? Because I assume like you grew up playing baseball.
Yeah, I was at my whole family. It was like all baseball. So I played baseball and football when I was a kid. And honestly, what drew me to drums was I had actually started out playing saxophone in school in the school band, and I wasn't very good, and it was kind of frustrating. And then I was in like general music class in elementary school at Hawthorne Elementary School, and then I was playing. They had like a set of rototoms there, and I was kind of playing the rototoms, just like dorking around. And the teacher was like, "Hey, you should play the drums." Like, and she wasn't my band teacher; she was just a general music teacher. And so I kind of like took that to heart. I was like, yeah, that would be more fun. I think I'd be better at that. And like, I begged my parents to let me switch over to the drums, and then they said, cool. And like, as soon as I started playing drums, it was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is so much more fun and intuitive for me as opposed to saxophone. So, and I got good really quickly. And so I was like, that kind of was a fun thing for me. And it was kind of a thing that was just only it was like my own thing, like it didn't have anything to do with like what the sort of baseball side of the family. But yeah, it's like immediately started playing drums and loved it.
That's really cool. Does that music teacher like realize what she did? Like that she
I don't
inspired you?
know. I have no idea. Like, probably not. I would love to go back and figure out who that is.
Yeah.
Um, I'd never really. It would be cool to do that, but like I do kind of. To me, like I do a lot of coaching, like young kids, and whether it's flag football or baseball or whatever, and I think about that teacher a lot because it's like you can say something to a kid that kind of unlocks something that for you might just be a throwaway comment or just like a little compliment that you give a kid. But I think that like in a weird way, like that encouragement from her like completely changed my life. And when you're a coach and when you're around kids, you can never underestimate the power of like encouraging a kid, trying to empower them to say, hey, you're really good at this, you can do this, like keep working, and um because I think a lot of people think that the kids are coddled and all that, but like to me as a coach, um I want my kids to like me. I want my kids to know I'm on their side. I want my kids to think that I'm encouraging them and I believe in them. And, and to me, that's just like, I think kids need that more than ever.
Totally. I agree with that. Who were your first drumming idols?
Ooh. Well, I grew up, like obviously when you're like a kid in the sort of late 80s, I was definitely a kind of got interested in for sure. Neil Peart was like an idol to me, but I think like as I kind of got older, I loved U2, so I loved listening to Larry Mullen Jr. Um, Bill Berry from REM was a huge inspiration for me. Um, just I started to kind of gravitate towards drummers that really played for the song, and like but I didn't really catch on to John Bonham until I was older. But yeah, definitely a handful of them that I looked up to a lot. And also my first drum teacher, who I totally idolized, and he was like when I think I was in fifth or sixth grade when I started, and he started teaching me. He was a senior in high school. And so or no, he was like maybe a junior in high school, but he taught me and he was amazing. He unfortunately passed away from COVID, but he was a killer drummer, and I kind of looked up to him a lot.
That's really cool. Have your inspirations evolved a lot since then? Like, do you have completely different inspirations as a drummer today, or is it a lot of the same people?
I think it's a similar sensibility that I gravitated to as a kid. I still like now. Um, I like drummers that really impress me are drummers that have like a really cool combination of power um and feel. Like a really good example of that would be like John Theodore. Um in today's, and he's a great drummer. He played for Queens of the Stone Age. I think he's playing for Bright Eyes now, but like that's a really good example of someone who can play for a band like Queens of the Stone Age, and they can like flip the switch and play for a band like Bright Eyes. Just that ability to play for the song, to play with a sense of like, imposing his will on the song, but also playing for the song and playing powerfully, but then also being able to hold back when the song requires it. So I think obviously I think John Bonham was really good at that. I think Dave Grohl is really good at that. Like, drummers who play for the song and don't try to be the star.
How did you make the decision to pursue drumming and Jimmy Eat World full time? Like, was that a big thing, or were you making the decision baseball or music?
Well, like in my senior year in high school, I was playing baseball, and I wasn't getting along with the coach, and I wasn't particularly having a good time. And and that was right when Jimmy Eat World, we were starting to rehearse and practice, and I was really excited about what we were doing. And it was very early days, like this was toward the end of my senior year, so it'd be probably spring of 94. I quit baseball. I literally walked off the baseball field, got in my car, and went straight to band practice. And that sort of flipped the switch for me. And there's a part of me that regrets quitting baseball. I probably could have been a little bit more mature of a kid and hung in there. But at the end of the day, like I think I was kind of being called towards something that I was really excited about, and it was like a new territory, and I wanted to explore that. So like, and then just starting to play in Jimmy Eat World, it was always just a sort of, we just kind of set small goals and like just kept achieving them. And we definitely got lucky with getting signed to Capitol, and entering a world where we could go on tour and be supported and go down that road. And then by the time it just sort of slowly turned into like, oh hey, I think we could maybe do this for a long time. And obviously the success of Bleed American kind of solidified that idea that we could like do this for a living as long as we didn't fuck it up.
Do you have an album out of the entire Jimmy Eat World discography that you feel is the best on a purely drumming standpoint?
That's interesting. Yeah, like I think it's funny because, and people don't usually like these answers, but I think the more recent albums, I'm, like I'm using all the years of experience and previous albums to learn from and incorporating what I've learned into the Integrity Blues and Surviving. I think my drumming is better than it's been on any album.
I had
And
Surviving on this morning, and I couldn't agree more. I think
yeah, I
that's
mean,
a fantastic drumming album.
yeah, and I think a big part of, for me, is not only just the drumming, but it's like I'm also the person who's achieving a drum sound. And I've gotten, as I get older and older and older, I'm very old now. I've gotten better at that. And so to me, when I listen to Integrity Blues, when I listen to Surviving, I'm listening to a culmination of a skill of not just playing, but tuning the drums and achieving the right sound for the right song, learning studio techniques that really help to make the drum track feel good, is something that's super important. Because like when, especially the way we make albums, the drums come first and then everything is built on that. So if you don't have an inspiring drum track that sounds good and that feels right and that has a kind of satisfying impact, then you'd much rather have people building their parts on that than something that doesn't have as much life or doesn't have the right sound or has something in it that's distracting for whatever reason. So I think that it's really, really important. And I've learned over the years, like, okay, I need to keep developing the skill. And I feel like the last two albums for me are, those skills and that learning coming to fruition.
Do you have any favorite tracks that like you're proudest of in that way that you listen to and you're like, yes, that was like the perfect drum sound I was trying to achieve?
Yeah, like the end of Congratulations, I think is one of my favorite drum sounds we've gotten. And I really like that part. And then I'm trying to think of other things, like, every song is so different and has a different challenge, but I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, that was the only one that comes to mind.
This one I think is a bit of a fun one. Obviously, Jimmy Eat World, you guys have been on probably hundreds of soundtracks over the years, over the 30 years of the band almost. On IMDb, you all have your own individual pages because of this. Do
Oh
you
wow,
know
okay.
the four movies that they list you as most known for on IMDb?
Oh man, I could take a guess. I would say maybe Van Wilder.
Yep, that's on there.
I would say, what's the Drew Barrymore one? Never Been Kissed.
No, that's actually
Okay.
surprisingly not on there. It's
Okay.
more
So then,
famous than some of the movies on here, though.
okay. So then I would say Orange County, maybe.
Nope.
I don't know. You tell me.
You've got the Butterfly Effect on there, the
Oh, okay.
Ashton Kutcher movie. I Am Number Four, which I'm not sure I've even heard of, to be
No
honest with you.
idea.
And the Nick Cage movie, The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, couple good ones on there. And also, we're playing a festival on the same day in October. And I'm
Oh,
looking
cool.
forward to that because my band is called Pup Punk, and we're basically just a pop punk cover band. Our set list is like an emo night set list.
Oh,
And we
okay.
usually
Cool.
close our gigs with the middle, but you're
Nice.
screwing us here by playing on
I'm
the same
sorry,
day as
man.
us. We're gonna have to not play that
You're gonna have to find something else. You're gonna find another closer.
one. Yeah, but it is our first festival. So I wanted to ask, do you remember your first festival and do you have any tips?
Well, okay. So the word festival is pretty broad, right? So we would play like punk festivals when we were a kid, like when we were early in the band, like, and they'd be like at a, VFW hall somewhere that was like a fest, so that's a tough one. But I'm trying to think of like a big festival. I really can't remember like that moment where we played like a really massive, huge festival. I didn't, yeah, we're like I said earlier in the podcast, I think there's a lot of moments in our band where we just kind of like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And we, you know, we played like our first big festival ever, and we didn't really think like it was a big deal or take the time to say, oh, hey, this, let's acknowledge like this is really cool. And like, let's write it in our journal or whatever. Like, we're really bad at that. So like, I think that's kind of a product of us kind of everything being a blur and just being like, okay, well, whatever, we're not really sure what we're doing. But if I were to guess, I bet you that moment was probably somewhere in Germany in '99 when we came out there and did a few festivals there.
Next year is going to be 30 years since you guys formed as a band. Do you have a favorite gig in that time? One that you look back on, and you're like, oh my God, that was our, you know, Oasis at Nebworth.
Dude, I would honestly say the like we played Brixton Academy a few weeks ago.
I saw you post a video from that show.
And that was the most bonkers show that like when I think back of like was the most fun show where the crowd was insane and everything, just the vibes were like on 11. It's got to be that show. Like it's like it was insane.
That's amazing. And you guys got a bunch of good shows coming up, a hometown show with the Maine coming up.
Yeah,
There's
that's gonna be cool
in the fall for you guys that go on their website if you're looking to see them live. And I saw you guys live in like 2012, I want to say. It was the final Bamboozle on the beach.
Oh, okay, cool.
Park. That was an unbelievably like inspiring day of music. So you guys, All American Rejects, Boys Like Girls, I think We the Kings, My Chemical Romance, and Foo Fighters all on the same stage. It was like an unbelievable lineup.
That's crazy. Yeah, I don't even remember that.
And this next question is a question that I ask every musician that comes on my show. It's my final question. Noel Gallagher once said that he's pretty much summed up everything he's ever wanted to say in his career with Rock and Roll Star, Live Forever, and Cigarettes and Alcohol. He says everything after that, he's kind of just repeating himself. If you had to pick 3 Jimmy Eat World songs that you feel like sum up what you guys wanted to say, what 3 songs would you select?
I think The Middle would be one of them, just because I think it's funny. Like there's so many songs thematically that are kind of like a version of that in some way. I think in terms of like I would say Goodbye Sky Harbor is one of them. I don't really have a reason for it. It just sort of feels like one, like
sometimes just feels right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then dude, maybe Something Loud, like, you know, just the to me that's such a, the lyrics that Jim wrote for that song are really pertinent to us and like encapsulate kind of at least sort of the latter stages of our career, like looking back, being able to look back and you know, so doing some self-reflection, not only for Jim personally, but us as a band. I think that sort of definitely encapsulate something that we're trying to say or tap into now.
I respect that. I like those 3 answers. I appreciate you giving me the time coming on the show today, and looking forward to October. Come see Pup Punk and Jimmy Eat World on the same day of Ocean's Calling and Ocean.
That's
City,
awesome,
Maryland.
man. I want to come check you guys out.
Dude, I can't wait. I'm very excited to watch you guys.
Okay, cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.